I didn't mean to buy trouble. I just wanted a story. And the story came wrapped in dented aluminum that smelled faintly of burnt circuits. When I powered it on in my Seattle apartment at 2:14 a.m., the desktop didn't load a name, it loaded a confession. An encrypted vault tagged Maya, a folder labeled Door Keys, and a plain text file titled, "In Case I'm Dead," appeared instantly. My voice was steady when I told myself, "We document, we don't intervene," but my hands trembled. Jess called and said, "Alex, shut it down now," and I said, "It's already open." A spreadsheet crawled across the screen, each row a lock picked: banks, security cams, gated communities, even a children's hospital ward. The webcam light flicked on without my touch. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed hard enough to rattle the floorboards. From a hidden recording, Maya Green's voice said, "If you found this, I didn't make it," and I whispered, "Who did?" The cursor pulsed like a heartbeat, and the laptop's fan rose to a fever pitch. Jess said, "Shut it down, Alex," and I told her, "If this is what I think it is, closing it won't save me." The vault labeled Maya asked for a phrase like a dare. "Ask the pawnkeeper." My mind flashed to the dim pawn shop on Aurora Avenue, where a woman sold me this laptop for cash and a warning. I told myself I was just chasing a story, but that thinned when I found a list labeled Bobby Monitors C. Jess whispered, "You look pale," and I lied. "It's just the light," while dragging a local copy onto an encrypted drive. The laptop fan hissed, and for a moment it sounded like it was laughing. I replayed Maya's note. Her voice had that brittle edge of someone used to being doubted. "If I disappear," she said, "follow the passwords to the doors, not the people. The doors tell you who chose to lock you out." I thought of courthouse doors, newsroom doors, hospital doors. I asked the room, "Why doors?" And the building answered with a bolt sliding shut somewhere above me. I wrote in my notebook, "Doors will access each power," underlining until the paper nearly tore. Through the wall, my neighbor's baby cried, thin and insistent. On my screen, Bobby Monitors C blinked like an accusation. "No real names," I muttered, "just patterns." But patterns become faces if you stare long enough. Jess said, "Meet me before sunrise, not at your place." I said, "Pawn shop first." She snapped, "You're not bulletproof." I pretended not to hear. I slid the laptop into my backpack, but the webcam LED blinked again. A system message popped. "Remote session request, ghost key." My mouth dried. I said aloud, "Not tonight," and yanked the battery. The fan died, the room went still. But the feeling of being watched didn't leave. I played the first note again, and Maya Green sounded tired of proving she existed. Her voice had grit, like someone who filed complaints in rooms with closed blinds. She said, "If I vanish, follow the doors." I paused the waveform and stared at my reflection. Jess said, "You turned her down last year." I said, "I called it too big and too vague." The words tasted like aluminum. The recording clicked back on, and Maya said, "Belief always arrives late to the crime scene." I whispered, "I'm here now," which was not a defense. I remembered her initial email about credentials linked to building systems. I skimmed it back then and archived it like a coward. Tonight, the vault sat open like a wound. I wrote her name in my notebook and circled it twice. Jess said, "Make her the anchor, not the ghost." I said, "Then I have to carry her weight." The laptop fan rose, as if it agreed. The pawn shop on Aurora woke before the sun. Its metal gate rattled up like a tired yawn. Ellen Whitford watched me from behind glass with that slow, measuring calm. She said, "You came back fast." I said, "The vault wants a pawnkeeper." She glanced at a dead camera in the corner and shook her head. "Not all doors invite guests," she said. The shop smelled like copper and dust. I set the laptop on the counter and kept my hand on the strap. She noticed and almost smiled. "Fear has fingerprints," she said. I said, "Maya trusted you." Ellen's eyelids fluttered like the cost of remembering. Maya paid in favors, not dollars, she said. She brought keys, not names. I asked, whose keys? She said, the kind that open buildings and close mouths. The rain picked up, beating time on the awning. I showed her the vault prompt, the line that said, ask the pawnkeeper. Ellen inhaled like the air cost money. Maya was mapping doors, she said. She believed doors tell who feels entitled. I asked about Ghostkey. Ellen's mouth thinned. A man who smiles at the wrong beat, she said. He bought quiet and sold access. I said, does he have a name? She looked at the unplugged camera again. Names are coins that change hands, she said. He used Novak when he needed to sound official. I felt the knot tighten behind my eyes. Jess texted, you okay? I typed, define okay. Ellen tapped the counter once, like calling a witness. Maya wanted her work to survive her, she said. She left pieces in places people wouldn't search. I said, like a pawn shop. Ellen nodded. Like a place that knows the difference between storage and hiding. Ellen spoke like each word had a fee. She brought me a hardware key, she said. Said it was leverage, not loot. I asked who carried the laptop in after Maya stopped showing up. Ellen's gaze drifted to a dent in the counter. Owen Hale, she said. He tells jokes at funerals and means them. My chest pulled tight. Owen had sourced me clean leads and dirty ones. He said, moving the laptop would keep her safe, Ellen added. I said, safe like distance or safe like silence? Ellen shrugged away, old grief shrugs. The difference is who gets to sleep. Jess called and said, tell me you're not alone. I said, I'm with the truth's babysitter. Ellen snorted softly. Babies cry when doors shut, she said. Hun. Adults pretend they don't hear. I asked for the pawn receipt. She slid a blank envelope across. You'll need this later, she said. Not for proof, for courage. Outside, the rain thinned to a mist that made the pavement shine. Jess waited by the curb, bomber jacket zipped, cigarette unlit between two fingers. She said, tell me you're done. I said. Owen touched the laptop. She swore under her breath. Across the street, a guy counted padlocks at a hardware display like they were trophies. Jess said, the one everyone suspects should look obvious. I said, Ghostkey reads poetry to doors. She cracked a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You're about to pick a fight with a locksmith, she said. I said, I'm writing their blueprint into sunlight. Jess squeezed my shoulder. Then wear sunscreen, she said. I laughed once and hated how thin it sounded. The city smelled like wet concrete and copper. Somewhere, a truck backfired, and both of us flinched. Owen Hale sat at a corner table in a Capitol Hill coffee shop, wearing his usual smile that never matched the topic. You look like you're about to accuse me of charity work, he said. I dropped into the seat across from him. You brokered Maya's laptop. His smile stayed, but his eyes blinked too slow. She asked me to, he said. For safety. The way he said safety sounded like he meant distance. Jess leaned on the counter ordering coffee, watching us in the reflection. You ever hear of Ghostkey? I asked. He stirred his coffee without looking down. Myth with a number, he said. Cash up front. He slid the sugar jar toward me like a peace offering. I didn't touch it. The hiss of the espresso machine filled the pause. I said, Myth doesn't leave badge logs. His smile twitched, just enough to notice. I asked again about Ghostkey, and Owen rubbed his jaw like polishing a lie. He's a guy who pays for silence, he said. That's all I know. He reached for the bill before I could. Let me get this, he said, over-tipping like guilt wrapped in a bow. Your story's got fingerprints, Owen, I said. You just wiped them badly. Jess appeared beside me, coffee in hand. The ones who pay up front always want the receipt, she said. He smiled without humor. Keep the change, he told the barista, sliding the bill over. I saw a number scrawled in the corner, starting with E48. My stomach tightened. Back at my apartment, I spread the door keys data across a city map. Each credential matched a building access system, newsrooms, clinics, banks, storage facilities. I layered it over municipal zoning, and a spiral pattern emerged around 3 neighborhoods. Jess leaned over my shoulder, her coffee steaming between us. "Breathe," she said. "If I breathe, I slow down," I said, tracing red lines across the map. "This is someone's circuit." My pulse matched the pace of the plotting. Every line I drew narrowed the circle toward a center point like a tightening snare. At the center of one spiral was a private bank downtown, badge-only access. Using credentials labeled Vault Night Porter, I logged into their internal system. "We're crossing a line," Jess said from the couch. "We're looking at the line's shadow," I answered. Security camera thumbnails bloomed on my screen. Marble corridors, empty lobbies, air humming with money. I noted a timestamp, 2:40 on the week. Maya vanished. Jess came closer, leaning in, eyes scanning every feed. In camera 9, a figure crossed the corridor. Calm, steady, suit perfectly tailored. Jess whispered, "He smiles at the wrong time," though we couldn't see his face. Badge log read TT, Novak. The name scraped against my memory. Search results for Thomas Novak returned a single alias, Ghost Key. The tightening rope in my chest pulled hard. "He was here," I said, the cursor trembling on the log. Jess exhaled slow. "Then he's not a myth. He's your next door." I'd assumed Maya was only a victim because her voice carried exhaustion, but Ellen's words, "doors, not people," kept echoing. Digging deeper, I found a hidden subfolder inside Maya, called Pledge. Inside were email chains between her and board members of a charity hospital, the language stiff and strategic. They weren't about treatment or donations. They were about building access pathways. Jess read over my shoulder. "She was making a blueprint," she said. "A map," I corrected. Each message read like a transaction of trust. Access codes traded for protection. "She wasn't chasing power," I said. "She was building exits." Jess murmured, "and someone shut them." The timestamps clustered in the week she vanished. The pattern landed like a jolt. The passwords weren't stolen at random. They were given by insiders. Each came from someone inside a building where corruption lived in the wiring. Developers were laundering money through the hospital's accounts, and Maya's map was for whistleblowers to escape unseen. "She wasn't just a victim," I said. "She was the architect of an underground railroad for information." Jess sat back, eyes narrowing. "Sunlight burns both ways," she said. I stared at the list, each door, a quiet rebellion. Somewhere in the system, one of those doors had closed on her. Then came the gut punch. In an audio file dated 3 days before she vanished, Maya said, "If Owen insists on moving the hardware, don't let him. He thinks selling it protects me. It protects him." My hands stilled on the keyboard. Jess whispered, "He was covering himself." I called Owen immediately. "You did it for you," I said. "You're tired, friend," he answered, voice calm but clipped. That false intimacy made my skin crawl. He wasn't just a link in the chain, he was holding it. Owen's voice came smooth as glass. "Ghost Key threatened me," he said. His version had the right beats, but none of the right notes. Jess reminded me. "He's the one who gave us the E48 number." I ran it through a VoIP lookup. No Poland, just a rented server from a developer's shell company. My stomach sank. "You've been passing breadcrumbs in circles," I told him. Silence on the other end, like he was deciding which mask to wear next. Ellen finally called after closing the shop early. "Maya left me something," she said. At her counter, she placed a small NFC fob in my palm. "Wing C, neonatal," the label read in faded maca. "Doors sometimes need hands," she said, her voice going thin. My chest tightened. I understood now. Maya chose doors because names can be erased. A lock can be changed, but a door remains. Ellen closed my fingers over the fob. "When you use it, make sure it's for opening," she said. I nodded, though my stomach said it would mean both opening and breaking. Night draped over Seattle like a wet tarp. Jess drove, knuckles pale on the wheel, while I outlined the plan too fast. We'd use the NFC fob to enter Wing C of the charity hospital, where the logs matched bank transfers to a developer's donation account. We go in, copy the ledger, and leave, I said. "If it feels simple, it's a trap," Jess replied. "It feels necessary," I told her. The rain streaked the windshield, breaking the glow of streetlights into fractured halos. My pulse was a metronome. Every turn of the tires felt like we were threading a needle in the dark. The NFC fob kissed the reader, and the lock clicked open with an almost polite sigh. Inside, Wing C glowed sterile white, humming with the quiet breath of neonatal units. The scent of antiseptic hit first, sharp and clean. I felt like a thief in a cathedral. Jess whispered, "Make it quick." I knelt at a service terminal, my hand steady only because my heart wasn't. The keyboard clacked softly as I jacked into the network. Rows of bassinets waited behind glass down the hall, tiny shapes cocooned in light. I told myself this was about stopping harm, not causing it. A camera above us hummed softly, but door keys looped the feed in 90-second bursts. "Maya wrote mercy into code," I murmured. Jess glanced back. "Let's not waste it." The progress bar inched forward, a green tide creeping toward salvation. At 63%, a notification popped up, "Remote session, ghost key." My skin chilled instantly. It wasn't a ghost in the machine. It was the man himself, alive on the other end. Jess took a step toward me. "Alex," she warned. I didn't look up. I typed faster. Words appeared in a chat window. "Doors open both ways, Alex." I typed back, "Who locked Maya out?" The cursor paused then. "She walked out. Through a door she built." My pulse jumped. A second line followed. Owen held it. The progress bar hit 100%, and alarms erupted down the hall, a shrill metallic chorus. Jess yanked at my sleeve. "We're moving," she said. My mind was still stuck on the thought of Maya walking through a door she made, and the question of where it had led. We split instinctively. Jess left me right. Security boots pounded behind me, echoing up the stairwell. On the second-floor landing, Owen appeared, breathing hard, suit jacket askew. "Give me the drive, I'll draw them off," he said. His voice was urgent, but too rehearsed. "You're done drawing lines," I told him. "I did it to keep her safe," he said, eyes pleading for himself, not for her. I tossed him a decoy drive and kept the real one pressed to my ribs. His hands closed around the fake like it was a lifeline. I didn't stop moving. We spilled into the rain like fugitives breaking the surface after too long underwater. The alarms were still shrieking in the hospital, but the sound was swallowed by the hiss of wet streets. Jess slid into the driver's seat, breath ragged, hair plastered to her face. "Do we have it?" she asked without looking at me. I held the encrypted drive tight in my palm, like it might dissolve if I loosened my grip. "Enough to burn a few doors down," I said. The laptop in my bag spun up, its fan a restless whisper in the dark. Jess gunned the engine, tires spitting water, and I started uploading the ledger. 3 editors, a prosecutor, and a priest who once promised me a favor. Each file transfer bar crawled upward like a fuse burning slow. Jess's eyes flicked to the mirror. "They'll come for it," she warned. "Let them," I said, watching the city smear past in neon ribbons, every turn of the tires tightening the knot in my chest. Ellen's pawnshop stayed dark for 48 hours, its windows reflecting only rain and passing traffic. When it reopened, the walls were bare, the display cases empty except for a new security camera angled directly at the front door. Ellen stood behind the counter in a navy cardigan, both hands folded over a yellow legal pad. "Maya used to say the city is a body. You heal the doors, you heal the blood," she told me, voice carrying the weight of repetition. I traced my finger along the glass counter. "Bodies scar," I said. She nodded, eyes steady. Scars mean we survived. I asked if Maya was dead. Ellen's silence filled the space until the hum of the camera became the only sound. When she finally spoke, it was almost to herself. She crossed a border she built herself. The words lingered like the aftertaste of something bitter. The Charity Hospitals Board released a statement full of euphemisms about misallocated funds and internal restructuring. The ledger ripped the veil away, its entries pointing to service doors, loading bays and server rooms tied to shell accounts. 3 developers resigned in the same week, each hiding behind corporate legalese instead of apologies. We didn't name a single person, Jess said, flipping through the published article on her tablet. Just the doors they used. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. People build their own mirrors when you hand them a key. My inbox began to fill, the new messages stacking faster than I could read. Access codes. Patterns. Addresses. Each one a fragment of the same truth, a city built on locks, and the quiet wars to control them. The call came at midnight from a number with no country code. I answered without speaking. Owen's voice slid through the line, smooth and tired. "You think you're the only one who wants justice," he said. "You want immunity," I replied. He didn't deny it. "She asked me to move the laptop," he insisted. I paced the balcony, the damp wood cold under my bare feet. "She asked you to stand in a doorway," I said. "You chose which way to hold it." For the first time, his voice cracked, not with guilt, but with the realization he wasn't the protagonist anymore. "It wasn't supposed to end this way," he said. I looked out at the wet city below, each light reflecting on black pavement like 100 half-closed eyes. "It hasn't ended," I told him, and hung up. A week later, a courier left a plain, unmarked envelope at my door. Inside was a grainy photograph printed on matte paper, a ferry deck under overcast sky, a woman in a gray hoodie half turned away from the camera. Her face was hidden, but the curve of her jaw and the way her hair escaped the hood made my chest tighten. On the back, in neat block letters, she walked out. The handwriting was clean, deliberate, Novak's style. Jess stood beside me, reading over my shoulder. "You'll chase that ferry for years," she said. I stared at the photo for a long time before pinning it to my corkboard above the desk. "I don't have to catch it to know where it sailed," I said. But the truth was I kept looking at it like a compass I didn't trust. The burner chat blinked awake, like an eye that never slept. Ghostkey wrote, "I don't break doors, I teach them to forget they were closed." I typed, "You sell forgetting to the highest bidder." He replied, "And you sell remembering to the loudest." The line sat there, smug as a mirror. "Where's Maya?" I asked. "On the other side of something she made," he wrote. Jess read over my shoulder and said, "He's buying time." I pictured the bank corridor and the neat stride that didn't hurry. "You walked her there," I typed. He answered, "I don't walk anyone. I arrange the hallway." The cursor blinked like a heart that wouldn't quit. "Then, meet me," I wrote. "I don't meet," he said. I pass keys through hands already reaching. The chat ended with an empty prompt and my reflection in the glass. I published the piece under the only title that fit, "Doors, Not Names." The layout looked clean and mean, like a scalpel. Comments flooded in, arguing about ends and means, heroes and locksmiths. The hospital announced a new access policy, written by the nurses and night techs, not the donors. Jess said, "That's the difference that matters." I watched the policy PDF load, full of simple rules that protected the smallest patients. My inbox pinged with gratitude and anger in equal measure. Ellen called and said, "Maya would have liked the title." I said she named it, really. The city felt a degree brighter, like someone turned a dimmer switch and then walked away. I saved the article offline, in case the light flickered. Under the I-5 flyover, rain turned to mist and hung like breath. Jess asked, "Are we done?" Her voice held a hope it didn't trust. "Stories end," I said. "Systems loop." She nudged my shoulder with hers. You sleeping? I said, less badly. We watched taillights smear into red commas on wet concrete. What about Owen? She asked. I'll bargain with whoever opens next, I said. Jess flicked the unlit cigarette away and laughed at herself. Old habits, she said. If a door knocks back, I told her, call me. We stood there until the cold pushed us toward coffee, not victory. The mist tasted like aluminum, but it wasn't choking anymore. Ellen mailed a small parcel wrapped in brown paper, taped like a promise. Inside, the NFC fob lay on cotton, label faded, Wing C, neonatal. A note in tidy script read, return this when she asks. I held the fob, heavier than metal should be. Jess said, you keeping it close? I opened the desk drawer and slid it beside a stack of index cards. The tab read promises. A joke that stopped being a joke. The webcam LED stayed dark, like it had finally learned manners. I said, she may never ask. The room answered with quiet that didn't feel empty. I closed the drawer softly, as if not to wake anything. On the night, the story won nothing, and still changed something. I powered up the dented laptop one last time. The vault labeled, Maya opened to a blank progress bar, a door to a door. I said, thank you, and meant it. Her old note played in my headphones, belief arrives late. I whispered, I paid full price. The cursor blinked like a soft metronome keeping time with rain. Jess texted, you good? I typed, good enough. I shut the lid and listened to the building breathe. Somewhere far off, a fairy horn sounded like a promise clearing its throat. I turned off the lamp and let the room hold the dark without menace.